Greetings, magical mavens. The Spring Equinox, aka Ostara, is just around the corner. Have you decorated yet? If you're still looking for ideas, this Dollar Tree DIY is a fun, crafty activity that'll make your spring decor look really fancy, even though it's super budget friendly. And for a quick announcement, I also invite you to join me and some of my witchy friends for a free workshop on spring spells and witchy self-care for Ostara season, where I'll be teaching you how to use these egg ornaments as magical spell tools. It's the Empowered Modern Witches Festival, hosted by my friend Tanae Stewart, the Witch of Lupin Hollow, who I've interviewed on this channel and podcast many times. It's a multiple-day online festival that starts on March 20th, 2023, so definitely go and get your free ticket now. The link to learn more will be on the screen now and also will be linked below. So in this video, I invite you to spend the day with me crafting, decorating, and cooking for a witchy start to the spring. I'll be showing you not just the dollar store DIY, but also a more eco-friendly version of the craft that you can do with real eggshells if you want to. And I'm also sharing with you my new favorite spring recipe, which is Irish boxty inspired potato pancakes. So grab a nice cup of tea and let's make some magic. Regardless of whether it's all sunshine and crocuses outside, or if it's still blizzarding where you live, let's use our creativity to bring some of that energy of newness and promise into our homes with the ancient, powerful symbol of the egg. Cultures throughout the world have been using egg symbolism to represent rebirth and prosperity since the dawn of time. For me, it represents the magic of springtime, because this is the time of year when I'm just beginning to come out of my shell, so to say, and emerge into the new astrological year as the reborn version of myself that has been incubating during the hibernation of winter. And it also evokes the inner child, because it's just an excuse to get out the craft supplies and have some fun. So for this magical craft, you're going to need whole eggshells of some kind, put a pin in that for later, acrylic paints in your choice of colors, ribbon and/or craft wire, a glue gun, and optionally any additional embellishments of your choosing, such as fake flowers or rhinestones. So, quick disclaimer, last year when I first came up with the idea for this project, and between you and me did most of the filming for the plastic egg version of the craft, my intention was originally to make a ton of ornaments out of natural eggshells to cover both of my sabbat trees that I decorate for each season. But I discovered that blowing out organic eggs can be extremely difficult, so I caved and decided to just use Dollar Tree Easter eggs for the bulk of the project instead. But I have since discovered that one way to sort of remedy the difficulty of egg blowing is to carefully carve or chip fairly large holes at both the top and the bottom of the eggshell, and then just plan to cover up those areas with decorations later. It's a little bit messy and imperfect, but it gets the job done so much faster than carving pretty little tiny invisible holes and then spending a lot of time and energy trying to get the egg yolks to come out. So if you did want to go more eco-friendly with this craft, you definitely could, especially if you're just decorating one really small tree or using these as altar decorations and you only need a few ornaments. In my case, I wanted to go big or go home this time and I needed an absolute ton, so I went with plastic last year. But this year, I'm actually challenging myself to blow out every single egg that I use in my cooking for this entire spring season to see if I could make more ornate eggs out of the real eggshells for my home decor shop. So keep an eye out for that if you don't feel like doing this yourself, but you like this idea. So the first step is to paint your eggs. You could just use acrylic paint, but since it's me and I like to go overboard, I decided to make a variety of different styles of eggs, one of which was the royal golden egg. And since I've never used an acrylic gold paint that looked truly metallic, I went for the spray paint for this first set. For the other colors, I started trying to paint them with acrylic paint and a paintbrush, and for some of the colors, it would have needed hundreds of coats that way, so my partner had the brilliant idea of dipping them in the paint instead. This was extremely messy and needed to sit overnight in order to dry, but it was totally worth it in the end. Once they're good and dry, the next step is to add a design. Again, I used a variety of different design styles for this step too. For the first 5 white eggs, I used markers to draw symbols of the 5 elements on them, along with some blue chinaware inspired abstract botanical patterns. There were a handful of the dollar store Easter eggs that were already fitting into my color scheme, so I decided to try something totally different with these and attempted a gold flecked look. So I spray painted them, but I only pushed part of the way down on the spray button, and I kept my hand moving to evenly disperse the drips of paint. For the royal golden eggs, I went for a sort of Baroque foliage design in Sharpie, and then added rhinestones and traced over the pattern with 3D fabric paint. I went about it by painting one side first and then setting it on the mouth of a bottle to dry before finishing the other side. This worked well for working on these after work, sitting in front of the TV, and then leaving them overnight to dry. It did take some patience to get all of these done, but think of it as a meditative practice, and I'm sure you'll enjoy every minute of this craft that invites us to slow down and be playfully creative. Wherever you're at in the project, at this point, you've likely worked up a bit of an appetite, so while these are drying, I say that as if I didn't film that part a year ago and the cooking part yesterday, but we'll pretend while these are drying, let's make those delicious Irish-inspired potato pancakes as an excuse to blow out another egg or two. So this is my adaptation of a recipe I found on Pinterest from a blog called Lemon Tree Dwelling. They said it was a twist on classic Irish boxty, which according to my quick research doesn't normally include cheese or garlic. I also added my own twist, skipping out on the usual addition of shredded raw potatoes and just went with the roughly mashed boiled potatoes only. So as with all of my cooking videos, I did not follow the recipe exactly. I did not even really measure, to be perfectly honest. It's just not really something I like to do. So I did link the recipe that I used for inspiration in the description below if you want to follow it exactly. Basically, you're just taking 2 cups of mashed potatoes and mixing it with 1 cup of milk, of course, an egg, and then seasoning it with salt, pepper, garlic, and some fresh chives. recipe had also served these with a poached egg, so that's another potential opportunity to blow out an additional eggshell if you want to. But I had a feeling 2 of these pancakes would be more than enough food for my lunch, so I garnished mine with a dollop of sour cream instead. I will definitely use 1 scoop of the leftover batter to serve alongside an egg for breakfast tomorrow though. Only mine will be scrambled or fried because any kind of runny yolk egg situation is a hard no for me. How do you like your eggs? I'm curious. But what's really fun about this recipe is that I would happily eat this for any meal of the day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and I couldn't think of a better thing to serve over Irish coffee for brunch. And I have to say, this is definitely one of the best new recipes I've tried in a long time. Granted, give me carbs, cheese, dairy, and a sprinkling of something green and freshly picked for springtime, and I am basically in heaven. So this made my vegetarian carbaholic heart sing with joy. I had actually never heard of this before until I found this recipe on Pinterest. So I'm wondering, have you ever tried a recipe like this? What ingredients do you use, and how do you like to serve yours? Let me know in the comments. So now that we've eaten, it is time for what for me was a lot of work, but for you watching will likely just be a very relaxing montage of decorating with these beautiful eggs that we've made. So I apparently don't have footage of it, mysteriously, but I also decorated the remaining eggs with a variety of different designs, a lot of which I just borrowed ideas from Pinterest. I experimented with the acrylic paints, the puff paints, and some glued on rhinestones. I also added some beads to the golden eggs using needle nose pliers and craft wire. And you'll also get to see me put some last-minute finishing touches on some of the eggs we made together, just by tying ribbons onto them or stringing fake foliage onto their hangers. These plastic eggs came with little holes in them, and they're also really easy to cut holes into in basically the same way we did with the eggshells, only without the fear of them cracking. So some of them I just strung a little bit of string through to hang them up, tying a thick knot on the inside, and for others I did a really ornate bow and I just popped that on with hot glue. I'm doing these 2 Sabbath trees that are flanking my TV year round, I like to make them as symmetrical as possible. So I always gather all of my materials and divvy them up so that there's basically an even amount of each type of ornament and each sprig of foliage to use on each of the trees. So that is basically what I will be repeating again for this spring equinox season, but this next little segment is where I'm decking it out even a little bit more. You see, last year by the time I was done making all of these freaking eggs, we were well into the spring equinox season and we're almost coming up on Beltane/May's Eve. I was happy to keep the egg motif going throughout the entire spring season. That was no problem for me since spring starts late here anyway, but I did want to bring in a little bit of that Beltane energy by making my trees look kind of like maypoles. So here I'm going way over the top and adding a ton of ribbons. inner child was absolutely in love with this whole project. Sometimes adulting can get the best of us, especially over winter, so I've made a tradition out of always doing a little something extra playful and creative this time of year to shake off those winter blues and call in a fresh new energy for the astrological new year. The inner child archetype is just one of 3 major themes that I like to tap into every spring equinox season to help me experience more alignment, abundance, and fulfillment as I grow like a seedling into my next chapter of life. So for even more magical homemaking tips and a deeper dive into the power of seasonal living for springtime, I invite you to join me for this video right here.